Hi, Vanessa with Ellie and Mac, and today we're going to be doing some alterations. We're going to be taking pants in at the waist, doing blind hemming, as well as making a plus size blazer. Also, let's talk about, is it cheaper to sew or to buy? Let's get started. So I know that there's a lot of people who are needing their pants taken in right now, or whether it's skirts or anything. And taking in some of these things can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're dealing with the side seams. And so with this pair of pants I'm going to be altering today, we're going to be just sizing it down one size. And so I'm going to be taking a half an inch from all the seam allowances on the side. Now these pants are really interesting. They actually have a built-in elastic that goes along the waistband, as well as we have pockets. I'm going to be showing you how to handle some of these obstacles that can come up while we're taking pants in. I'm also going to show you how to shorten as well as blind hem. So let's get started on these pants. These pants are precisely why I say yes to altering. You see some of these ingenious ideas that are in ready to wear that you might not think of. Having this thick elastic helps stabilize the waistband, not only helps hold up the waistband, but it keeps you from having to interface it. So I will definitely be taking this and trying it on some others. Now I'm going to be also picking along the side. I decided that I probably only needed to go down 7 inches. When I laid these flat, you could see that they were kind of coming from the back a little bit wider than the front by quite a bit. And then it started to kind of ease in after 7 inches. So I did take a moment to kind of look at these and find the best solutions. Now, originally I was going to take off half an inch from the sides, but then I didn't want to shorten that pocket at all, nor did I want to cut into that delicate fabric. If you ever cut into that pocket fabric, it is so prone to fraying. And then I just cut the elastic even with the front of the pants. Now we're gonna go start taking it off. And I accidentally did the chalk line where I couldn't see it, where you couldn't see it very well. Now with this, we're gonna wanna go straight on that waistband so it lines up perfectly, and then we're gonna start easing it back in. So you can see that it's a perfect straight line at the waistband here, and then I start easing in as we go down. And this is just because we just want to alter the waist so it stays up. You can start taking the inches all the way down, but for this pair of pants, I felt like this was the best course of action. We don't want to do too much with each pair of pants. So you can bring it down, but I chose not to. And then here I'm just going to be sewing, and you want to make sure that those side seams where they line up at the waistband are done. So I always try to start those ones before I start sewing down from the bottom up. And these pants, I want them to have the same finished details as they had before. So I'm making sure that I'm lining up the seam allowance just like I would. And then you can see how this looks. And so those lines are lining up. Now we have to figure out how to handle this elastic. But before we can do that, we need to take care of some of those raw edges. So I'm just going to take it over to my serger, and I have the black serger thread. So this is going to look identical to what it looked like beforehand. And then to take care of the elastic, we're just going to sew it together with the exact same seam allowance. I know one stitch on the elastic does not seem like it's going to hold it in place, but I'm just going to show you that I'm going to open that elastic flat, and then we're just going to be top stitching it. So this is going to be just as secure as if we did a box with an X in it, but we want to make sure that everything looks exactly the same. Now there wasn't a cut in the elastic to begin with, but it's going to be okay here. There was also a stitch inside the seam, and that's what actually held in the elastic, so it wasn't just loose on the bottom. So I just stitched inside that seam. So now we're going to be shortening up these pants. So we're going to start at the center inseam, and then we're going to shorten it to 27.5 inches. So I'm going to first mark where I would like the pants to end up. Then I measured that I needed to take off 2 inches. And so I'm going to be lining up the pants together and using tailor's chalk with my quilting square to mark exactly where I want to cut. This gives me a little extra allowance to make sure I'm just cutting once, but this is my measuring twice here, right here. And then I can come back with my rotary blade, and it just goes a lot smoother when I'm not trying to cut on the hem. Here you can see I have both sides serged. And then I'm going to be marking 1 inch from the bottom. And these little markings helps me remember exactly how I'm going to be folding my pants and ironing so I can make the perfect blind hem. So definitely do not be afraid of your tailor's chalk. I actually have it chalked all the way around. And then it's just easier for me to just fold over my pants, and then I know they're going to be folded on that chalk line. I know this is like the closest view ever, but once I have it folded on the chalk line, I can bring it over with my iron. And I'm just going to make sure that I iron in those folds as well as I possibly can. And then you're going to just clip all the way around and add as many clips as you may need. And then we're going to do the blind hem. So this one is one that's for fabric that does not have a stretch, so there's no zigzag in it. And it just does like 4 stitches on the hem of the serge, and then it comes over to where the fabric is folded. So you're just going to fold down where your clips are, and then you're just going to leave a lip, and then your fabric is actually folded under. So there's like this little knife thing that helps hold that fold over so that your needle can bounce back and forth and only doing 1 or 2 stitches. So it's just you fold down that hem so the serge has a lip, and then it's just folded over underneath that presser foot. And this is a different presser foot, but I've noticed that most sewing machines come with one of these blind hem foots, and they're just perfect for professional pants. So these had one of these on there before. So I'm going to just show you one more time. So here's the chalk line, and then I fold the chalk line under, right? And then you see that we have a fold up here at the front. And then you can see what it looks like. And honestly, the whole point of this is so you don't see those stitches. And so you can see that it just practically disappears. And this is what it looks like to have those pants taken in that full inch on both sides. And it's a little bit more, and she actually needed quite a bit taken out of these because I just cut 1 inch off and then with the seam allowance. So it's a little bit more, but it lines up perfectly. And then that blind hem looks so nice, and it's just nicely attached. So let's take a moment before we jump to this blazer to decide if it's going to be cheaper to make or cheaper to buy. Now, the reason why we decided to make this blazer is because the ones that she could find in her size at a particular store that was made for these plus sizes was $150. Now, I spent $25 on fabric. And so, as you can see, it was 6 times more expensive to buy it. Not only that, ones that she did find and purchase, she had actually dry cleaned them. So that's like an extra $12 to $20 every time she needed it clean. So this way we were able to make one in her size with fabric that can be washed. And it was actually quite a bit cheaper. Now, for myself, I often find that making my own clothes does save me a lot of money compared to when I go to the store and buy it. I also have this problem where I imagine what I want and I know exactly what I want, and I get to the store and they're not seeing my imagination, and I usually cannot find it. Whereas when I make my own clothes, I can say I want that fabric into this top or this into a skirt, and I can let my imagination run wild and get exactly what I want. So I was very excited to be able to do this for my friend. So let me show you all about this Ellie Mac blazer. The size range on this blazer is actually 2 extra small through 8XL. So there's a huge size range here, and it is an absolute amazing blazer. So let's take a moment and talk about this elevated blazer. There's so many options. You can do a curved hem or you can do it straight. You can have pockets with a flap or just regular pockets or no pockets at all. You can have buttons in the front or no buttons. There's just endless options. And here we're adding another option. As you can see from the side, I'm adding a little triangle so I can remember that I'm going to be doing open flaps. Now, these open sides, I'm just coming up 6 inches, so you still have access to your pants pockets. So you can just put your hands in your pant pockets and there's not going to be any bunching. I thought this was such an inspired idea for my friend, and it's going to help her be even more comfortable in this blazer. Now, this fabric is absolutely beautiful. It has this textured crepe to it, and it's quite a bit thinner than scuba, but it's going to be such a nice breezy fabric. And sometimes when you're looking for blazers, you don't get this type of option. So this is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Now, when making these blazers, there are lots of little marks you want to make. Now, I've decided that this is the easiest way for me to do the diamond darts. Is to mark the top and the bottom of the dart, and then I like to take the chalk and I like to do a line down the center of the dart. I'm just trying to see which side's going to work the best with my projector, because you know how the projector, it comes down and you just don't want to be in that space where you're trying to see where it's going. So it takes a little bit of time with a projector, but I do find these a lot easier than using a printed pattern because I can easily access them. So once you have the line down the center, then I decide which side's going to be the easiest to be able to see and chalk in at the same time, and I only mark half. Now I like to do straight lines, and sometimes I even go past the center point because I need to know where to pivot my needle, and sometimes that's really hard to see if you have such an ease. It's just not very sharp at those corners. And so you just want to be nice and smooth, but make sure you know where that dart comes out. And then I iron it in half, and I just don't chalk in the other side. It's just a lot easier for me to see where to fold than it is for me to see what exactly both sides are. They're lined up perfectly. So the folding line is perfect for me. And you can still do the folding line and chalk in the whole other side. But I've just started doing these darts like this because I find it the easiest. Now I have the long threads. I'm going to sew off where that top dart is and of the dart, and then I knotted these. I know I've showed darts so many times, so and then we're just going to move on to our shoulder seams. And you're just going to be clipping everything. And I just worked right along with the instructions here. And this is a knit pattern, and so it gives you a lot more options for fabric. And you have the knit interfacing here. And I love this color. It's so nice. But yeah, you do need to have some good interfacing for these. Now, I like to just clip this where I'm going to just clip this together, and this is going to be the outside part of it. So you're just going to clip around with the piece of the interfacing and the outside of the fabric together, right sides together. And then we're just going to take it back to my sewing machine and do the seam allowance. So the seam allowance on this blazer is 3/8 of an inch, and we're just going to be sewing the outside lines here, and we're going to keep the inside open, and you're going to see all this right here. So once we flip it where it's right sides out, we're going to top stitch it, and this is a 1/8 top stitch, and you're just going to try to make it really nice and smooth, and this is going to be that nice collar that you see in most blazers. And you know, I love all the finished details on this, but it's just so nice that it's made out of knit. I just feel like I have one of these made out of French terry, and I absolutely love it. So once I get done making the collar, I can bring it right back to the blazer and just clip it on. And then once I have it clipped on, and I still have those triangles so I know where those lines are, and you can see that I've really used my iron when I'm making this. I've taken those seams and I have flat ironed them. I am so sorry. You're going to be hearing some buzzing of airplanes throughout this whole video, and they are just flying by every 5 minutes. So I'm really trying, but it's been like this 4 weeks. So once I get everything clipped together, we can take it over to my sewing machine and sew it again with that 3/8 seam allowance. And this blazer, the instructions are amazing. The video by Diana is just, will help you sew this along. So don't let these business casual or business clothes make you terrified, because this is where some of your biggest savings is when you're sewing clothes at home. You know, some these business attire clothes can run up really high. So you want to make sure that you take your time, because nicer fabric does cost a little bit more than, you know, your normal DBP, but you want to make sure they're nice. So this is where we're going to be making that little slit. And so I've already done it on one side, and this is often what I do with my videos is I try it on one side before I show you how to do it, because I want to make sure it's perfect. So we're going to take this, we're going to do the exact same slit on this other side. So I have it measured at 6 inches down. I'm just making sure that everything is lining up perfect. And I measured right here, and it is also 6 inches from my triangle. Sometimes I forget the measurements, so I always just double check to make sure everything's going to be perfect. So make sure you just take your time here, and we're just going to chalk it in. And by chalking it in, we can take it over to the serger, and then we can serge it so we have finished lines. Now this is where I upped my seam allowance. So instead of doing 3/8 of an inch, I actually moved it up to 1/2. So I did add another 1/8 to the seam allowance on the sides, but it still fit absolutely perfect. So yeah, you know, with this stretch, I think it's worth it if you want the side vents. And I just thought this was such a genius idea. So you're just going to sew it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down until you hit that little chalk mark. And then from that chalk mark, you can just easily open up that seam, and you can top stitch both sides of the fabric down. And that's what's going to give you that cute little finished detail. So we want this to look really nice and finished. Now I always start at the bottom, and you're going to be able to come down one side and then go straight across and down the other. So here, this is, it looks like it's about a 1/4 seam allowance right here that I'm sewing down. And then once you get to the top, past where those seams are, you can just hold those two sides together, and you're going to stitch across. And then when you get to your right seam allowance, you can flip it and then just sew exactly the same way as you did before, right down the other side. And that's just going to give you the perfect little side slit. And as you can see, both sides just, it looks so nice and professional, but you're going to be able to, this is what it looks like on the inside, but you're able to access your pants without having this huge, you know, bunching. And then it's just very easy from here. We're going to add on the sleeves, and always just make sure that your sleeves are right sides together on the outside, and on the inside you have both of those seams. And then I sewed down the facing that's along the front, and I just want to have all these seams nicely finished. And so this one I can roll under, because you're just going to sew it together on the bottom. And then once you have it sewed together, just like this, you want to have the same seam allowance, and then I rolled hemmed the bottom of it. Now I did get a little bit out of order on this one. Like I said, I usually do one side and I switched to the other. And this one, yeah, I got a little ahead of myself with the rolled hem, and so I could easily line that up. But you want to make sure that you get this facing done. And you can even tack down this facing at the shoulders, because along the neckline, just go along the shoulders, and this will help secure it as well. And then later, we're going to add these like little details so she can just clip together the front of this blazer instead of having to have the button. So it's a little bit more looser and very comfortable, but she looked great in this when we got this all finished. So here I'm just finishing up that rolled hem, and it's just such a nice, beautiful finished detail. Now, with this, having the side slits, you're like starting and stopping at each of, you have about 3 different sections of this. And so using that serger tell to make sure I can guide my sewing machine over that little thicker part where it's already
folded under and sewed is very helpful. So don't cut your serger threads until after you're done, especially if you're planning on roll to hemming. Now, I didn't show how I added the pockets, and I did add a button to the front of the pockets to finish. But again, there are so many details on this blazer, and you can go and watch the full tutorial, or you just can follow along with the instructions for this elevated blazer. But I can assure you, this is such an easy project to do. And this is how the blazer turned out. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Don't mind my lumpy mannequin. I just wanted to make sure I had her upper bust size so I could see how this was going to fit, and it looks beautiful. It looks a lot more beautiful on my friend than it does on my lumpy mannequin, but I am very excited to try something a little different today.
So, what do you think about that blazer? I already really love the Ellie neck blazer for myself, but I just saw it on my friend and it looked fabulous. And also being able to choose your own fabric for some of these things is what makes it so wonderful. You can pick fabric that's a little more breathable for summer, or if you tend to get cold, you can pick fabric that's a little more warmer. You can line it, you can do pretty much endless possibilities, add more pockets. I actually loved the vent idea on the side. And I realized, yes, you absolutely see that with men's suits. So you can be able to put your hands in your pockets. There's so many different things that we can do with these patterns when we make them at home that I absolutely do believe that it's worth the cost. So thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying these alteration videos, please put if there's anything else that you would like me to alter. And then as well, just thank you for watching. A like and subscribe would be wonderful. Catch you next time.